here. Welcome to my channel and the first card for 2020. I hope you all had a lovely Christmas and New Year and got to do what you like doing best, whatever that might be. I have lots of ideas for some great cards this year. Last year I struggled a little bit with coming up with the ideas, but this year I seem to be brimming with them, so hopefully it'll be a great year. Recently I've had quite a few new subscribers join, and I've been asked quite a few times to have some more easy cards, or not necessarily beginners, because I'm definitely not a beginners channel, but I'll hopefully do some easier ones that some of the beginners can replicate or get ideas from. So this card, I'm starting off with a card base that's 5 inches by 7 inches, and I've cut out a stitch rectangle with some nesting dies that's just a little bit smaller than my card base, and on that I'm going to stamp some Sweetheart Roses done with the W+9 freehand florals stamp set, and I'm going to cut out a heart die. So I'm going to measure out, I've got a smaller die than the actual one that I'm going to use, and I'm going to just trace around that so I kind of know the area and shape that I'm going to be stamping in. So I'll start by doing that. I'm going to be using Altenew Crisp ink mini cubes just because I have them, and I'm going to use the Red Cosmos series, which has got 4 different reds from pink to a darker red. I'm also going to use I only end up using one of the greens out of the Green Fields set. I also decide that the lightest of the pinks is just too light, so I bring in another colour that I have called Cotton Candy, and I'm going to use that as my lightest colour. This freehand floral set is great because you don't have to, it's a layering stamp, but you don't have to be very exact with it. You can be quite freehand with it. So I'm going to work my way around the heart shape, stamping firstly the bigger rose, and then I'll fill in with some small little sprigs with smaller roses. So it's going to be completely random. I'm not going to really line them up. I'm going to turn the stamps around, and I'm just going to have some fun stamping. The bigger roses, I'm going to go from the Cotton Candy. The next shade up is going to be Coral Berry. The next one up is Ruby Red for the largest rose, and then for the sprigs I'm going to go the next shade up, so they're going to be darker, so I'm going to go Coral Berry, Ruby Red and Grapevine for those, and the green that I'm using for the sprigs is Forest Glades. So I'm going to firstly work my way around doing the larger rose right around the perimeter of the heart that I've drawn. It's not the largest of the roses in the set, it's the next one down. I thought the largest one was going to be too big, so I'm going to work my way around that and then do the layers, the 3 different layers on top of each other. And then once I've done those, I'm going to then go back and fill in the gaps with 2 different sprigs that are in the set, and on the sprigs I'll put the tiny little roses in several places just to fill in some of the gaps. It's perfectly random. You don't have to be very precise or have symmetry on both sides or anything. It's just nice and free, and you'll be really pleased with the results at the end. Once I've gone around with the larger roses and then the sprigs with the smaller little rose buds, I'm then going to just assess where I might have gaps and where I need to fill in to make it more heart-shaped when I come to put my die cut on. So I go around and I fill in just a few of the gaps with darker flowers, and then I'm happy with the result. I can go on to the next stage. The next thing I'm going to do is stamp my sentiment. For this I'm going to use my Misty positioning tool. Now I have to say this is the best tool that I've ever invested in. It allows you to do a lot more techniques, and it's especially good for doing these layering stamps, because especially the more complicated ones, because you get time to play around and get it just in the right position. But it's also been a lifesaver for me for sentiments, because I'm the worst person for doing sentiments. I quite often used to, and if I used an acrylic block, get a really thick edge and a thin edge, and I'd miss parts of the words and I'd get them crooked. So it's just been the best thing ever, and I highly recommend them. So I use a technique that I call kissing, which means that when you ink your stamp up and put the lid across onto your card, you just touch it very lightly, so you're just getting a really light inking, and then you do that a second time and sometimes a third time, and you get a far better, clearer stamp of your sentiment than you will if you just do one and push down on it. So it's a far tidier way of doing stamping sentiments, and I'm really like that method. Once I've stamped the sentiment with VersaFine Onyx black ink, I will put some clear embossing powder on it and heat set that. Why have done the sentiment before I've done the cutting out of the die? It's far easier to center the sentiment in the die shape than it is to stamp in the center of the die shape, if that makes sense. So it's much easier to do it this way if you can, and then you can make sure that the dies before you cut it is centered nicely. Why I'm using this sentiment is that I don't have a lot of sentiments that are suitable for Valentine's, but you could use any sentiment you might have. The whole point in my videos is to give you the ideas, so go for using other products that you might have. I don't expect people to go out and purchase the same ones that I've used. I'm sure you've got sentiments that are suitable in your own stash, and you could even change the flowers around the heart. Instead of these particular sweetheart roses, you could definitely use any floral stamps or pretty stamps that you might have. To put the die cut sentiment onto the card, I'm going to stick some craft foam onto the back, so I'll just cut out a scrap into a rough heart and that'll go onto the back, and I'll stick that onto the card with double-sided tape. Once I got the card all stuck down, I decided that the bottom portion of the card was a bit plain and looked like it needed something there, so I got out a memory box die set that I have. Excuse me, it's called Mini Heart, and I'm going to just cut out this one heart on the selection there that's just an outline, so I'm going to cut 3 of those out with some just scrap gold foil card, and I'm going to stick those down in a group of 3 at the bottom of the card, and then the inner bits that I've got out of that die I'm going to just put 2 beside the sentiment just to tie them together, and I'm quite happy with how that looks now. I'm using a Marvy jewel picker to pick up the tiny little hearts from the inside of the die cut and glue them onto the heart around the sentiment, and then I'm going to use a pair of tweezers just to hold on to the outline of the hearts and put some wet glue on those and stick them down. This glue dries matte and completely clear, so you won't notice it, but I'd rather just only put tiny little dobs if I can, just so that you can't see the glue. See, it's the just outlines. So that's the card finished. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope it gave you some ideas of how you might be able to do a Valentine's card similar to this. I'll leave some photos for you to have a look at, close-ups of the card, and at the end of the video I'll have another card that I've made with the same stamp set, and also another Valentine's card that you might be interested in. So thank you for joining me today, and I hope you'll join me next time for the next card. Bye for now.